it seems like this U-turn was inspired by a hostile media and perhaps a few angry backbenchers. Is that your take on it? And if so, that's quite worrying, isn't it, in terms of leadership that we can rely upon?
It's extremely worrying. I mean, you haven't got leadership. What you've got is a bunch of headless chickens running round, talking tough, talking Thatcher, talking Churchill, acting the grand old Duke of York, and just reversing their position. Now, that tax cut at most, at absolutely most, was going to cost 2 billion. At best, it was going to raise money, and it might have just been neutral. Compare that to the 150 billion that's gone on the energy cap, and you see how trivial it actually was. And really, they should have just stuck to the course, particularly after briefing that they were going to stick to the course. And really, this is an extremely worrying sign of, whether or not Britain is in safe hands. It's in very, very pusillanimous hands.
Who do you think they thought this U-turn would win over, Anne? That's what I'm baffled by, because if you are one of those people who is planning to vote Labour, which has given the Labour a 30-point lead at the moment in the polls, this isn't going to convince you that the Tories are on your side. And if you are a high rate of taxpayer who suddenly felt that this is the Conservatives you know and love, you're now disappointed as well. So I can't work out who they think this appeals to.
Well, the answer to that is nobody. I expect what they were worried about, and this is guesswork, I don't know, but I strongly suspect they were worried about the path that the conference might take, about an awful lot of division being displayed, and decided that the easiest way to buy that off was to get rid of what everybody was focused on. I still don't understand why, which was the upper rate tax. And I suspect that was their reasoning. I doubt very much if even the most optimistic of them thinks that it's going to win them any votes.
Really isn't. I think also what I suspect they've misunderstood, Anne, is that Kwasi Kwarteng has said this is a distraction. I'm not quite sure what he means by that, because it totally contradicts what Liz Truss was saying last week about the fact that she will make tough decisions, even if they aren't popular. And that resonated as a sound of leadership that a lot of people were reassured by. We thought, OK, let's just give her a chance. I quite like the idea of sort of a tough love approach. But actually, I think the policy in terms of this budget which upset people the most was the bankers' bonuses being uncapped. That is perhaps, if they did want to make a statement about not being on the side of the uber-rich, that is perhaps the one they could have reneged on.
It would have been vastly more costly to do so, not only in terms of money, but in terms of policy. I mean, the policy is to get Britain competitive, to make the maximum of EU freedoms, to attract investment, and the bankers, the abolition of the cap, which does apply throughout the EU, but wouldn't apply to us now, the abolition of that cap was a sign that we're going to be competitive, we're going to be, if you like, Singapore on Thames, where we're going to give the EU a run for its money. And all I can say is the EU, and indeed Keir Starmer over here, must be laughing themselves silly at the moment, but that is the reason why they've gone for the 45p rather than the bankers' cap, which was the more important move.
Got it, understood. Now, Michael Gove and Grant Shapps are apparently behind the scenes. Well, not even behind the scenes. They've been quite honest about the fact that they're heading up this rebellion. You've got an idea of what these two characters are like. How dangerous might they be for Liz Truss?
Michael Gove is extremely dangerous. He spends all his time conspiring and plotting. I mean, I know this man. I've known him for years. Ironically, he was a very, very good minister. He was good in education. He was good in justice. Didn't have very long in either, but he was good. But what he is not is a good colleague. He is not loyal, and he gets bees in his bonnet, and then he will do whatever he can to destroy the people in his path. He did it with Boris. He's done it numerous times behind the scenes in briefing against people. He is a plotter. He is just a natural plotter. Can't help himself.
What can she do about him? Is there anything she can do?
Well, the extreme, of course, would be to withdraw the whip, but given that she's given in to him and abolish the top rate of tax, and abolish the abolition of the top rate of tax. The fact that she's given in to him would make it now look very odd if she punished him for bringing that about. So I don't really know that she can do much. I mean, the problem facing any Conservative leader at the moment, it faced Boris, it's faced them all for some time, is that the Conservative Parliamentary Party is an undisciplined rabble. And until that, somebody gets on top of that, and that is the Chief Whip's job, I'm afraid there's very little that a Prime Minister can do. And a party which is taking Britain on a new course, like it did under Thatcher, needs, crucially, discipline. I can remember when we used to say in the Tory party in Parliament, oh, if the Chief Whip tells us to jump out of the window, we form an orderly queue in order to do so.